Conservatives are coming for no-fault divorce. Whatever happened to staying out of people's private lives? New report from Media Matters for America shows a rising trend of right-wing influencers and Republican leaders and politicians, including U.S. Senate candidate J.D. Vance, advocating for the end of no-fault divorce, a policy that allows people to end a marriage without being required to prove wrongdoing by their partner, including adultery, abuse, or desertion. You're not happy, you can leave. Background on no-fault divorce. No-fault divorce, which was first enacted in California in 1969, has always been a feminist issue. It's allowed domestic abuse victims to leave a bad marriage without barriers. It certainly empowers women, all people, to escape legally binding situations with someone they don't love. One would think no-fault divorce is a no-brainer, a completely non-controversial issue decided half a century ago. But efforts by the GOP to change it. Justice Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion in the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe very clearly opened the door for further rights, particularly around marriage, to be reversed. And already the Texas Republican Party includes a proposal to rescind unilateral no-fault divorce laws and support covenant marriage, and to pass legislation extending the period of time in which a divorce may occur to 6 months after the date of filing for divorce in its 2022 party platform. J.D. Vance said of the subject of divorce, "This is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace," which is the idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long run. That's porting out of Jezebel. In addition to politicians, conservative influencers Tim Pool, Steve Crowder, Matt Walsh have all been critical of no-fault divorce. According to Jezebel, Pool claimed that no-fault divorce laws to blame for the rise of pre-nuptial agreements. Crowder called it sexist toward men, and Walsh called for its abolishment. And speaking of Crowder, Candace Owens leaked a video of Crowder allegedly being verbally abusive to his estranged wife. In the video, the woman, 8 months pregnant, Owens calls Crowder a monster for his behavior. In an earlier story, the abuse of a child who was forced to eat his own vomit at school, Bennie, you referenced children as property. And as I looked through some of the research here and went over some of that, it, in my mind, made me feel like these conservative voices were approaching the spouse as property here. You can't leave me because you said you wouldn't, and now you're not allowed to, okay? It's not like a no refund policy at the store. Okay, you're not gonna get your money back, okay? But you can divest another way. But we're talking about human beings here. What say you?
Yeah, no, most definitely. So there's two directions that I guess I'll go here. And I guess I'll go with the lighthearted, funny one before I get in the serious one, which is, like, let's imagine hypothetically that these right-wingers, who already are revealing themselves to be like the most unlovable like people like that exist on the face of this earth, if they really did get rid of no-fault divorce, you really think that's going to help your chances in the dating game? You think more people will be more willing to get married to you if they know they'd be trapped forever? Like, you're undermining your own cause here.
You're onto something.
So, like, just to get that aside. But then there's, like, the serious layer to this, which fundamentally, this ties into every other thing that the Republicans are pushing right now. Like, all of it is really connected together because fundamentally, there is a core white supremacist narrative that drives the United States today, and especially is, like, persistent within right-wing spaces. It's like the 1950s, like, nuclear family type narrative where you have this like white man that's married to a white woman, and they have these children and their nuclear family in the suburbs, and he's the king of his own castle. And that very racist picture of American suburban life is what Republicans have based their entire ideology off of. And they try to justify like the violent tendencies of these men as justified because they're protecting women and children, and that's why they get to have women and children as property. But who are they protecting women and children from? And obviously it becomes, queer folks, black and brown folks, marginalized people just across the board. And then you have the core basis for white supremacy in the United States in its sort of modern conception is this idea as this cishet man as the king of his own suburban castle, and women and children existing as his property, and painting everybody that doesn't fall perfectly under that label as being some sort of inherent threat to their existence. And so all of this really ties in together, and it really ties into the central image of what a lot of people think masculinity is in the United States. They think it is being the king of your own castle. And so these fragile men who have wrapped up their entire ego in this fictitious picture of themselves, this is why they attack feminism, because they don't like the idea of women having autonomy. They want women to be property. They think the whole purpose of getting married is to establish a woman as a baby factory that is your property. And the fact that less and less people are willing to date conservative men nowadays, specifically because their mentality is deeply off-putting and puts these men in a position where they think they don't need to go to therapy, they think they don't need to work on themselves, they definitely think that they don't have to do basic chores around the house, and all of the data backs this up. And so they find themselves struggling in the dating game because they have turned themselves into the most unlikable people. And now they're just going these violent outbursts demanding that we get rid of no-fault divorce. And so there's a terrifying personal element to this though, because that mentality is what drives so much domestic abuse. It is quite literally what drives so much domestic abuse, where they reject the autonomy of women in their lives, and they feel threatened by it, and they lash out violently, unfortunately, and that is so common in the United States to a very terrifying degree.
It is terrifying, and it's also something you're onto it, because they also are prevented from taking a good look at themselves, right? If only you don't let your son go to a drag show, I got to protect him from that. If only I don't let my wife befriend a single friend, go have cocktails, she won't get these crazy ideas. I mean, remember, they didn't want the slaves to learn to read. I think we know why. You're so right. They never can take a look at just themselves. Make yourself more attractive, okay? And you may get the kind of loyalty and commitment you perhaps are seeking, instead of just this insecure cycle here.